folks, welcome back to Farming Simulator, and today we're going to have a look at the DriveLaner mod for FS25. Now, I did a video on this for FS22, and it has changed slightly for FS25, so I thought it was worth a revisit. This is a mod that's available on all platforms, and it's a mod that lets you manually add tram lines. So if you're playing without precision farming and you want tram lines, or if you're playing with precision farming and you don't like the way Giants automatically creates the tram lines, this lets you add them manually, a bit like Proceed, but available on all platforms. So let's jump in. Now, this is different to the FS22 version in that you need to use seeders that have been prepared to work with the mod, and the mod includes a whole bunch of them. So I don't know how you prepare seeders to use it. It doesn't appear like there are instructions included with the mod, and it looks like you need to edit the i3D file. So not a trivial process. That said, you get a fairly comprehensive set of seeders and planters. So if we go in via the mod, because that's the easiest way to see, you'll see we've got, I think it's all of the base game seeders and planters, so you've got plenty to choose from. I'm going to be demonstrating on a relatively small field, so to see the effect I'm going to pick something relatively small. That's a cultivator. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, I want to pick something reasonably small, so let's have a look. 4 meters, probably that's okay. It's really long though. I've not planned which implement I want to use. 3 meters. Let's go for 4 meters. 4 meters works nicely for the maths. 180 horsepower. Brilliant. So let's buy that. Yes. And then you need to spend £1,000 on the DriveLaner attachment as well. And that's this little guy. And you need an horsepower. And then I'm going to need a tractor because I don't have anything on this save. It's a blank save. We need 180 horsepower plus. So let's go for a nice Deutz. There we go. Lovely job. Right. So how does this all work? Well, if we hook up the tractor. So if you're familiar with this mod in FS22, you may remember there was a console that came with it that appeared in the tractor. That's gone, and you may remember that you attached the DriveLaner to the tractor, and then it worked like an additional implement as a cultivator. It still works as a cultivator, but you now attach it to the seeder. There we go. So it attaches to the seeder. The idea being that a lot of seeders have these cultivated discs anyway to do the tram lines. So if we unfold the cultivator, we get it appear, and then you can then use the mouse controls to move it. I find the right option. So we can move it up and down. That's how you enable the tram lines appearing. That's with the left mouse button. And then if we hold down both mouse buttons, because I've got course play enabled, course play appears, but then we can also set it to the correct width for the wheels of your tractor. I'm going to set it to be at about the point where it matches up with the cultivators on the seeder. If you are a keyboard and mouse person, you can also use the equivalent controls that match up on the keyboard. So let's fill up the seeder through the joys of easy dev controls, because realism is key, folks, and get over to the field, which is just around the corner from here, and I'll show you it in action. Now, the pure mechanics of how you put the tram lines in, I'm not a complete expert in, but what you're looking for really is to put a tram line in on odd multiples of the working width of your seeder. So for here, let's assume We've got a 4-meter seeder. Let's assume we've got a fertilizer spreader that has a 12-meter working width. So we're going to be wanting to put in our tram lines every 3rd row. Now I do have VCA installed, but I'm going to use the base game worker because that way it sort of will represent performance for console players as well. So we'll come in, we'll select 3 headlands. There we go. And we get lined up on our first headland. I'll just demonstrate it briefly just to show you it working. Come on. Come on. I will show you it working. Honest. There we go. So let's just get lined up. So you don't have to have the implement selected. You can do it all with the seeder selected because it does work off of, he says. If you use the mouse controls. Oh, it's doing weird things. Using a different seeder to the one I had selected last time. Why is it doing weird things? There we go. So, yeah. I was using the wrong mouse direction. So you can have the seeder selected and then use the mouse controls to raise and lower the cultivator that's attached. And the nice thing is that when you want to do your tram line, once you've lowered it, it raises and lowers with the seeder because it's attached to the seeder. And I'll show you that once we get onto a tram line. So if we select a crop that can be planted in this month, which canola should be able to be. So currently they stay raised because we're not putting in a tram line. And off we go. Let's put in our first row, and yeah, so this lets you, without precision farming enabled, put tram lines in. With precision farming enabled, choose how you want to run your tram lines, and have a bit of control over things. It's not, if you're familiar with Proceed, so if you're a PC player and you're familiar with Proceed, we don't have Proceed currently. My preference is still Proceed. Apologies, mod created, if you're watching. Now, I know the way this mod has been done this way so that it works on all platforms, because Proceed works through a script by disabling bits of the seeder. You can't do that on all platforms, and by doing it with an attachable cultivator, you can do it on all platforms, so it's a really good way of making this accessible to all. The problem is it doesn't quite give you as neat lines. Now that might be because I'm not very good at doing this, but that's my experience. That said, it's the mod we have available to us, and it's available on all platforms, so that's a really good thing, and it's done really, implemented quite nicely. On the implement, depending on the CD you pick, you can't actually see that you've got it on there because some of them do have black cultivator discs that sit in exactly the right place that it essentially becomes invisible a lot of the time. So it's kind of cool in that respect. I actually quite like the way the implementation has been done this time, aside from the fact that it does need preparation of the vehicle, so you can't use it with every single implement. But there's a good enough selection that I don't think that is an issue. So we've done our first set. We now want to put in a tram line. And I'm going to bring this tram line in from the edge of the field. So we'll get on our row. We're going to drop the seeder down, and then I'm going to drop down the cultivators. Now it doesn't animate the bit of the seeder, it just drops down our new cultivator. And if we then start to pull forwards, you'll see that behind where the seeder's running, we've cultivated out a little bit. And probably if we go into the planting map, you can just about see where it's not showing some areas as planted. Depending on how wide you set this, you'll get varying separation between them, that kind of thing. You could plant the whole field, and if you make a mistake, a way of correcting your mistake is you can turn off the seeder and go back over things to correct any errors that you make. But now what we can do is, if I lift up the seeder, in this case it doesn't seem to have lifted it. Okay. The other one that I tested, it did. So let's lift those up. I guess it depends which bit of the seeder and how articulated the seeder is. I think the other seeder that I was using was attached to the 3-point. Apologies for that poor information. If you're using a seeder that's on the 3-point and the whole seeder articulates, then when you lift up the seeder, it will lift up those cultivators as well, because this one isn't articulated like that. It's not doing that. So yeah, my bad. But you can see we're now getting our tram line. Obviously doing a 12-meter tram line is quite a narrow tram line, but it's a way of me giving you an example on a relatively small field, so something that doesn't take forever to actually plant, but show you it enough times that you actually get kind of a feel for what we're trying to do. So when I tested this myself, I used the field next door with a 6-meter seeder, and I put in the headland and one tram line, and I figured that wasn't necessarily the best example in the world. Now I could have used a bigger field with that 6-meter seeder, but I figured this was a nice location to actually do the work. So yeah. And you know, depending on the apparatus you're using, and depending on the platform you're playing on and how you like to work, as to so I like to use the keyboard for all of my front loader type work and this kind of operation. But because this seeder has a built-in cover, when I try and do that, I'm opening the seeding unit cover. So yeah, now here what we're going to do is, as we approach where we've already seeded, I'm just trying to look how far ahead we're seeding, and we're seeding actually off the front of the unit. So I'm going to stop the seeder there, but we can pull forwards and finish the tram line, hopefully, and hopefully this has worked. Then if we come back here, lift the cultivator, we've got our 2 tram lines joining together. So it takes a bit of practice, it takes a bit of work, and obviously now we need to be careful that we don't lower the seeder too early and destroy the tram line we've just created, or turn the seeder on too early. And we need to make sure we lift it or turn it off early enough at the other end that we don't destroy the tram line that we've created. So, you know, it's a bit of a process. You'll get used to it. We can stop a little bit early because we're putting a headland in here. So, you know, we can stop about here because the headland that we're putting in will sort that. And that will preserve what we've done. If we then run across here, we should be good. And again, we just want to lift a little bit early to preserve the headland that we've got here. Now, this mod will not be worker friendly or courseplay friendly. You're going to have to do this manually, which is different to Proceed. Proceed you can use with courseplay in its different modes. So bear that in mind. But we don't have Proceed in FS25 currently. So, you know, if you want to manually do tram lines, this is your option. And if you're on console, this is your option. Now, some of you, if you're watching this far, you're probably not asking that question, but you might be asking, well, why do I want to do tram lines? And that's personal preference, you know, because it is going to impact your yield because you're cultivating part of the crop out. And in some countries, I think tram lines aren't that popular or aren't a thing. But certainly where I am, most fields will have tram lines in them so that they can drive in the crop sprayer and that kind of thing. So, yeah, you know. It is what it is, folks. If you want them, put them in. If you don't, don't. So having done the headland, and again, I'm not an expert on this. I don't claim to be. We essentially now want to have, for what we're doing with our imaginary 12-meter spreader sprayer, or our implement, which is 3 times the width of our seeder, two unheadlanded rows between each headland. Or 2 tramlined rows between each tramlined row. So I'm going to do this one, and then we'll put a tramline in. And there is, you know, if you're on an implement which is an even width, it becomes a bit more complicated because you essentially need to put in a half row on the headland to get you started, and I'm not going to go into the details of that. There is actually some, if you want a bit of more guidance on how to do headlands, go back and download Proceed from FS22, because that has some really good guidance in it on how to set up headlands. Not headlands, tramlines. Why do I keep saying headlands? Tramlines. Yeah, that has really good guidance on how to set up tramlines. So here, what we want to do is get to the point where the cultivator is, or what I like to do is get to the point where the cultivator is kind of on the headland which is on the tram line. We're then going to lower down the seeder, lower down the cultivators which create the tram line, turn on GPS and go. And then when we get to the other end, we want to turn off the seeder, pull the tram line to the edge of the other tram line, and then lift it up. And I apologize for occasionally confusing my words. It's kind of hard to do all of this at the same time. So we've turned off the seeder, we pull forwards, and we stop, and then we lift up the cultivator, and then we lift the seeder up. But that kind of doesn't matter at that point. And then we get back on GPS, turn the seeder back on, lower the seeder, and then we do a complete row. And probably, depending on how your field works out and everything lines up, you're going to end up with maybe an extra tram line. That's just how this stuff works. But that's really the basics of the mod, folks. We'll finish the field up and have a look at what it looks like once it's grown in. We've got to do one more tram line. You get to see once more how I like to do mine. This is how I like to do them. It's also how I do them with Proceed. So, you know, the technique is similar because I tend to use Proceed manually. Proceed has automatic modes in, but I tend to use it manually because I'm a bit of a control freak. It is what it is. Let's not lie. So we lift up. Let's get ourselves some room so that we're lined up nice and early. get so that the cultivators are sitting on the edge of the previous tram line. Turn the seeder on, drop it down, lower the cultivators into the tram line, and off we go. Now, because this is a cultivator, it doesn't go around corners very well. So bear that in mind. You might find that as you try and go around corners, you get slowed down a little bit. That was certainly the case in the FS22 version. And then as we come up here, it's going to slow down a little bit, switch the seeder off so we don't destroy what we've done already. Pull forwards and then lift up. And that's our field seeded. We're then going to fold cultivator, which makes it disappear, or the tramliner, and lift the seeder up and fold it. And so that's the field prepped. If we then sleep, you'll see what it looks like with the crop starting to grow in, and the tram lines coming in. So I haven't used this mod a whole lot because I prefer Proceed, but it is a nice mod, and it gives you that control on console where Proceed has never been available, and while we don't have Proceed, it gives you that control as well. But as you can see, you do get a little bit of merging of the lines, and that's just the grid in the crops on the field. Yeah. If you've got any questions, stick them down below. If you enjoyed the video, click the like button. If you want to see more like this, then please subscribe. And thank you to the patrons and the YouTube channel members. And I will see you all next time.